Okay, Instagram says I'm live. Hopefully y'all will be able to hear me. I've got my fancy new audio mic going on, so hopefully once we get some people tuning in, you can clarify that you hear me just fine, and we can dip into it and pick up on today's Bible study. Hello to the first people coming in. Again, if you guys can confirm that you can hear me all right, we can jump into it pretty quickly without too much slacking and delaying. Last week we gave about a 5-minute run-up. I don't intend to take so damn long this time. So I hope everyone can hear me. I'm getting thumbs ups and stuff. Sound is just fine, says Mad with Hats. Awesome. That means that my fancy Bluetooth microphone is working great. Hopefully the light's looking good. I got this fancy ring light that I got for the seminar. We'll give it a couple more minutes for folks to filter in, of course. But we'll start more or less on time. I want to start by reflecting on the turnout from last week, which was phenomenal. Honestly, I did not expect so many people to tune in. I did not expect so many people to reach out to me. I expected a bunch of people to watch the first part, but to see how many people continued to the second hour and reached out to me, speaking about the impact it had on them, was more than enough motivation for me to keep going here. So I am excited to keep going to pick up basically where we left off today. And for those who did not check it out yet, I have set that link in my bio. If you go in my bio, you'll see the link to the actual Chabad version of Genesis with all the commentary and everything like that I'm reading from here, so you can reference that. Other housekeeping, I want to remind everyone, please, if you're going to my bio to check out all this other stuff, sign up for my mailing list. And also, just 2 nights ago, I did the Hebrew folk magic class, and the feedback on it was way beyond my expectations. Many people are still messaging me. I think they're reviewing, the recordings, coming back to it, and still messaging me saying that it is profound for them. So I look forward to seeing more of you guys checking that out, getting in touch with that. That heritage, right? That heritage belongs to anyone who works in the biblical tradition, anyone who works in really any sort of tradition that works with any of these technologies. You're going to benefit from that. Looks like Cosmic's in, so I'll be able to bring him up to join and assist shortly. We're going to wait until we have 25 in here, and we'll get started. I'm going to also get a cable so my phone doesn't die and we can run extra long. Hey, you know what? I'll wait till we're done the first half. You guys don't need an empty screen. Thank you guys for the feedback on the class. And again, if you folks haven't checked it out, that link's in my bio. You can check it out after this. Stick around for the live Bible study. We want everyone here as much as possible as we can get everyone here. Stay in here for Bible study. Leave later. That's my goal. So with that said, for those of you who have a Bible in front of you, who are going to be reading along, which I strongly recommend, I would recommend you open up to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Walking in my purpose. Well, I'll be teaching the folk magic class again. You know what? The recording, I feel like I covered it all, and the recording is pretty comprehensive. And with that recording is that ebook library of 85 plus books that cover really everything I'm talking about. The source materials, the later materials drawn on that, and that all comes when you purchase that recording. You get a text file in there that has a link to the Google Drive that's got it all. So that's all there. Again, the link's right in my bio. So I encourage you guys to check that out, dig into it. The seminar is about 2.5 hours, and then you've got years and years worth of books on top of that. So I will probably not be doing that exact seminar again, but I will be fluffing out those subjects. I think the lesson on Hebrew, first of all and foremost, is going to be a regular offering that I'm going to do. Nizrock, we're on Genesis 1 and 26. So, and I will take some time here, which I neglected to do last week, and Brother Cosmic educated me very on the value of doing so. So this week I will take some time to line this up before we get started. Okay, so we're going into the very end of the first chapter of Genesis and beginning into the second chapter of Genesis. I'm going to bring everyone up to speed on what we saw so far. So far, We saw the tohu vavohu, the waste and welter, as the really poetic translation called it, the mixed up chaos, be divided, discerned, space created in the waters, a firmament made to separate the waters and space made beyond that. And then in these waters that's in beneath, we see them pulled back so land could be there. We saw the land was made to be covered with vegetation, the way that like a face would grow hair, that the land was totally covered with vegetation, and that all the different animals, the crawling ones and the flying ones and all the different ones. And that's basically where we left off. We left off after the waters and the land and the animals and all that, and we got right around and paused right before here, right before the creation of man and woman. Well, it's really interesting because there's two versions of creation back to back. Okay, when you look at it, it's very clear. It's not a secret, it's not hidden, but the creation happens twice. The story is told twice. We'll see this again when we get to Noah's Ark, by the way, that the whole story is told twice. But in the first version of creation, God says, let us create them, boom. In the second version, this might be the story that you may be more familiar with, the bedtime story version, where God only creates Adam. Adam is lonely, and so God takes Adam's rib and creates Eve. So this is pretty deep because the implications that had for society, as woman being subservient to man, being property of man, being an appendage of man, so to speak, are all based on that idea. But only one of the stories says that. That's not the only version in the Bible. And this is another one of those, or a great example of those points that we can pay attention to and start to see where maybe the edition of the Bible that we may be familiar with has been compiled so as to favor a certain narrative. Okay, and what we're trying to do is decompile it, look back at it for what it is, and escape the narrative and just go with what the text says. That's the goal here. Another thing that I want to start with in sort of my preliminary comments tonight is a bit on the history of the document, the history of the faith of Abraham, meaning naturally there was the faith of, the Hebrew faith, which at some point we'll get through Exodus, right? We'll get through all the books, and then the Hebrews will settle in the Holy Land. They'll build a temple there, the temple for God. This guy that we're talking about here, this force that we're talking about here. But after that, okay, there's two kingdoms, a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. The southern kingdom's called Judah. It's one of the tribes of Israel. It's the bigger, stronger kingdom. It has Jerusalem in it, the capital, which has the temple in it. And from Judah and the rights of the tribe of Judah, we have Judaism, the Jewish people, okay? After that second temple is destroyed, they scatter. And Judaism, as we know it today, is the remnant of the traditions that were held in exile after they scattered. Meanwhile, before that scattering was the time of Jesus Christ. And Jesus comes into this milieu. This is the Bible that Jesus studied. This is the Bible that he would have preached, right? This Hebrew Torah is what he would have read. And so Jesus comes in this milieu, and from him springs a mystical sect, essentially of the Judaic faith, that becomes Christianity, eventually, right? Because we don't have the formal idea of Christianity for some time after the time of Christ. They're just the followers. They're just but they are the followers of this teacher. Okay, and this teacher is bestowing the wisdom and the esoteric understandings and keys that he carried to his followers. And this is what leads to the foundation of the Christian mystics. And it's not till 325 years later, when the Emperor Constantine of Rome takes a great interest in the Christian faith. Before then, they're sort of pagans doing their own thing. But he takes a great interest in the Christian faith, and being the conqueror of the world, decides that probably everyone should take a great interest. And so he convenes this council to formalize Christianity, and from that we get Catholic Christianity, etc. And this is a further progression in this line of traditions and the next stop in the journey of this book, because from there, laid onto it are the Gospels, etc. And a great deal of editing happens at this point in time. Things added, or not necessarily added, but things compiled, as it were, brought together, some things edited out, some for brevity, some for style, some arguably for political ramifications, because indeed this was an emperor, a political controller who was disseminating this faith. Prior to that, if you were a Christian in Rome, you were getting fed to the lions. There was no like, yay Christians. It was like a highly repressed underground sect of mystics. You didn't talk about it. Once Constantine made his conversion, started converting others, this really opened up the acceptance of Christianity, and the interpretation of Christianity got closed up accordingly. So with that said, this is not a lecture on Christianity, but I had been asked by a couple folks to talk about biblical history, and to talk about the importance of reaching back to the original Hebrew. And I think that keeps it in a capsule. Like, you're going as far back as you can here, back to Alexandria, so pre at least that editing, to get as original a version as we can. Is this a totally original version? Definitely not. We know that the Dead Sea Scrolls are different than the Septuagint, which is the version that we typically use. But nonetheless, it's better than it's more original. I'm not going to say better than, but it's closer to the original. It's truer to the original. It's closer to the source than the King James. Does that mean the King James is worthless to us? Absolutely not. I think the King James is highly valuable to us. In fact, I personally prefer to work with a Masonic Bible. But when we know the hidden meanings underneath things, when we know what the scholars who taught the scholars who translated it to English would have known about this, it really gives us a little more of the magic of it, if you will. I guess pun intended. So with that said, folks, any questions if you have any, but let's take it to Genesis 1:26. 1:26. And with that, I will pronounce the blessings for studying and reading of the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav vetzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of all, who hallows us with commandments, commanding us to engage with words of Torah, with words of law. And then we will pronounce Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the peoples and given us the law. Blessed are you, Adonai, who gives the law. So with that, we will kick off the first verse here. Doesn't look like we have any questions, so I think we're live and popping. So here we are, Kaf Vav 26. Vayomer Elohim naaseh Adam betzalmenu. Sorry, this is really small, you guys. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to zoom in here. My old eyes. Kidmutenu vayirdu bidgat hayam uv-of hashamayim uva-behema uva-chol ha'aretz uva-chol haremes haromes al ha'aretz. And God said, which God are we talking about here? We're using the name Elohim. We're talking about this, and we talked about that last time. The word El means God. The word Elohim is a plural masculine version of God. So it's almost like saying gods, nonetheless. Vayomer Elohim, and God said, let us make man in our image. Naaseh Adam Betzelmenu. Hold on, we got some stuff. We'll finish the verse and then we'll come back, I guess. After our likeness, Kidmutenu, and they shall rule over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the heaven, and over the animals, and over all the earth, and over all the creeping things that creep upon the earth. I assume some folks are already standing up being like, okay, who is God talking to here? This says, let us, plural, make man in our image, plural. Isn't the royal we? That doesn't exist in Hebrew. In English it does, and in King James it does, but the Hebrew says. Here we'll go to the other translation, the Robert Alter translation that I rather like. And what does Alter say? And God said, let us make a human in our image, by our likeness, to hold sway over the fish of the sea, and the fowl of the heavens, and the cattle, and the wild beasts, and all the crawling things that crawl upon the earth. So first we'll unpack this mystically, and say that clearly, at this stage in creation, there was something for God to address. God's not just shouting into the void and saying us like a crazy person. I'll pause also and say your conjure tip here is, this is your authority. This is your authority over all animals. This is your authority over all fish. This is your authority over all birds. And this is your authority over all insects. If you're working with bones, if you're working with animal parts, if you're working with insect parts, if you're working with insect hives, if you're any of these things that we're talking about, this is the first verse you pronounce over them. Because this is what establishes over them your guaranteed dominance. It's like the cop showing the badge. It's saying, look, man, I have jurisdiction over you. Don't even start. God said it. God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and they shall rule over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the heavens, and over the animals, and over all the earth, and over all the creeping things that creep upon the earth. And you can use that all the earth line, this Genesis 1:26, over any dirts that you might collect, over any crystals, minerals, etc. It's ruling over the earth. It's granting you the dominion. Okay? You take it for granted, but that is it right there. There's your deed. So now we'll go into the commentary. What does Rashi have to say about this let us make man? For those who are tuning in for the first time, I will be referring often to this guy Rashi. He wrote the whole commentary on the Hebrew Bible around the year 1050. He was a very prominent rabbi in a part of France. Rashi is an acronym for his name, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and he's the standard commentator on the Hebrew Torah. He kind of pulls together his insights, the oral tradition that he learned, and sort of the oral tradition that was recorded elsewhere, gathers it all together and presents it alongside the text. And almost any version of the Hebrew Torah, the Tanakh, that you will read will have it. So what does Rashi say? He says, let us make man. What does this mean? From this line, we learn the humility of the Holy One, blessed be He. Even God is humble. Why? Since man was created in the likeness of the angels, and the angels would therefore envy him, God consulted the angels before he did. So this is the wisdom of God in trying to preemptively settle the jealousy of angels. The angels being saying, we have all the obligations of angels, and that's what we have to do to get this form. Humans get the exact same form as us, and they don't have any of those obligations. And so as to kind of stem that off, to stem those objections before they come up, the response is, yes, we will include them in the decision making. So, what does he say here? And when he judges kings, he consults his heavenly household. For so we find regarding Ahab, that Micah said to him, and this is in 1 Kings chapter 22, verse 19, Micah says to Ahab, I saw the Lord seated on his throne, and all the host of heaven were standing by him on his right and on his left. Now, the commentator goes on to say, now, do left and right apply to God? No, there's no spatial dimensions, directions, anything like this when we're talking about something of that scale. So what are the terms left and right here? Rather, these angels were standing on the right for defense, and they were standing on the left to prosecute, as we would see in a court of law, or in a king's court, a royal court. Okay? Likewise, in Daniel, verse 4, chapter 14, by the degree of the destructive angels is the matter, and by the word of the holy ones is the edict. So, this duality. Here, too, he took counsel with his heavenly household. So this is saying that God, when he makes important decisions, repeatedly is checking in and bringing in the decisions of these two basic leagues of angels, or sort of families or teams of angels, the destructive ones, or the prosecuting ones on the left of God, on our right-hand side, if you're facing God, maybe, and then the defending ones, or the sustaining ones, the holy ones. So he said to them, among the heavenly beings there are some in my likeness. If there are none in my likeness among the earthly beings, there will be envy among the creatures of creation. So this is the flip side. Why is it that... So the angels are presumably created in God's likeness. So why is it then that humans are also created in God's likeness? Is that otherwise the humans would be jealous of the angels, it's saying. So this is all to kind of facilitate harmony in these higher ranks, in these ranks of the humans and the angels versus the animals and these lower things that we discussed 2 point. So further it commentates, why does it say let us make man? So it says, even though the angels did not assist God in the creation, and there is an opportunity for heretics to rebel and misconstrue and see the plural word, therefore, as justifying multiple gods or something of this sort, Scripture did not hesitate to teach proper conduct and the trait of humility, that a great person, and this is the lesson here, should consult with and receive permission from a smaller person. This, they say, is the ethical lesson hidden here. That even God didn't need the permission of the angels. God didn't even need the advice of the angels. Nonetheless, God says to the angels, what do you guys think? Should we make him in our image? Okay? Because this is a demonstration of magnanimity, of humility. Had it been written, I shall make man, we would not have learned that he was speaking with his tribunal. Then it would just be to God himself. And the refutation to the heretics is written right alongside it. In the following verse, it says, and God created. It does not say, and they created. So it's making very clear. There is a council, it's a group decision to be made, but the creative aspect resides only in God. The angels are not taking part in the creation of man. Are these branches of government? Sort of. You might think of it more like the left and right hand. I don't. The branches of government metaphor just doesn't hold up necessarily, because we don't have like a prosecutorial and a defending branch of government. So that doesn't. It's not like a perfect metaphor, and you know that I'll never accept that. So what does it mean by in our image? It means in our form. What does that mean? Sorry, I lost my page here. And after our likeness, what does that mean? So it says in our image and after our likeness. What is these? Why both? Why is it repeated? Likeness we think of as that has a representation of a person, carries their likeness, we say, right? So this says that the image is the form, and the likeness, and cosmic, you're going to love this. It says after our likeness means to understand and to discern. To understand and to discern. Doc, I know you're not split screen with me here, but for those who tuned in last week, Cosmic was talking about how discernment is that the first tier is knowledge and the second tier is wisdom, and wisdom is the application of discernment. And of course the third is understanding. That is what happens when you discern knowledge, then you reach understanding. And so that likeness, just being created with the physical form of God and the angels, again, not the physical form of God, but this shape, is to be made in the image of God. To be made in the likeness of God is to have that ability, that capability for discernment and for understanding and for something more than just the processing of information. There's this idea that animals process information, and that's it. They don't reflect on it. They don't think about it. There's no further computation. There's no consideration. There's not input, stimulus, response. In higher beings, we have more to this. We can take that stimulus, we can modulate it, we can reflect on it, we can discern it, and we can choose how we respond. Vayardu, the word, and they shall rule over the fish, is interesting because it is either a active or a passive word. So it says, this expression contains both the meaning of ruling and the meaning of subservience. So it says, if man merits, if humankind merits it, they rule over the beasts and over the cattle. But if they do not merit it, they become subservient to them, and the beasts rule over them. So this is an interesting concept in and of itself. The idea that we are not in a stable position here. The idea that this is dynamic based on merit. And merit is something that I talked about earlier with someone regarding the Hebrew folk magic course. But this idea that, like, you say the right words and draw the right seal, just because you did that doesn't mean that an angel is going to come out of heaven and answer you. You must merit it, right? You must be worthy of it. And this is at the core of all Jewish magic and mysticism is the constant cultivation of merit, of righteousness is the word. Because we don't have this idea that that we can be made clean through confession, right? That's a Christian concept. We don't that doesn't theologically exist in Judaism. In the temple time, there were the ashes of the red heifer, the pera aduma, and those can make anyone clean of any sin. But it said that we're so far past that; those are so long gone. No one knows where the ashes of the red heifer are now. That there's nothing to clean sins on that level anymore. And so, who could possibly be clean enough to properly interact with these energies? So I want to look through chat here because a lot's been going on. A lot of people hopping in. Correct, Flavius Goth. Rashi is not Shimon Bar Yochai. It is Rav Shlomo Yitzchaki. Sorry, I appreciate that. It's been a long time since I spoke Rashi's name outside of the acronym. So thank you for that correction. This image didn't include masculine and feminine. Not in the Hebrew. The Hebrew does not inherently indicate it. But we'll go back. Bet Salmo. Tselem doesn't inherently imply any mix of gender in it in the word itself. There's no mixed gender to it. Apologies, but what are we talking about? Castle Freak, we were talking about Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. We're about to go on to verse 27. And looks like the attendance is heating up, so I greatly appreciate it. So we move on. Chapter 1, verse 27. So in the last verse, God says, let us create man in our image and give them all these creatures to rule over. And again, this is the verse you want to use if you are commanding animal parts, commanding mineral parts, commanding dirts, etc., 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 etc. So I have a question here. If we don't reach the consciousness inherent in us and merit in us, then we can't gain our truest form. That is true. That's not what I was talking about, but that is true. If we the notion that our pure form is of God, essentially, and that pure and perfect essence of us is trapped in what is fundamentally a corrupting substance in order to manifest it in the material. And so in terms of how much fidelity we exist in each of these realms of creation is related to how much we are in accord with our higher self and our lower selves. And so the ability to call the angels, for example, you have to be in accord with the higher self and be kind of in the same frequency band, in the same wavelength, transmitting in the same zone as they are. Light and Shower Tarot, real good question. How does this work with evolution? Would us finally reaching that wisdom and discernment be akin to being given God's likeness? Well, so again, God's likeness is the form, it said. So this is in God's image is the form. God's likeness is applying that. So how it fits in terms of evolution. This is something that we asked, starting in school, right? Was the idea like, is the Bible fundamentally hostile to or contrary to the idea of evolution? I would say it is not. And I would say this based on the order that we see things come about here is the same order we know that it evolved in. But this says it happens in 6 days. But the idea of a day, as we know it, is a human day. Okay? This, we're talking about, humans didn't even exist until the 6th one. So these days are not necessarily human. How long is a day to the ocean? How long is a day to a planet? Okay? We have an earthling day. But the idea is that in the first few days that they're talking about, where there isn't even the heavenly bodies to mark the seasons, that time was so much longer that we can't calculate it based on the reckoning of days as we apply it now. That essentially you have increasingly delimited sense of time stream. Okay, that originally in these first 1, 2, 3 days of creation, you don't even have a sun and moon and shit. Like, how are you going to say when the day starts, when the day ends? The day ends when God says, okay, the day's over. We're starting the next one here. That's when the day ends. So that could be 100 million years. That could be 1 billion years. Okay? In terms of the physics of it, what we know, that tohu vavohu, everything they're talking about, the combining and separating, this is the physics we know of creation. So then in terms of evolution of species one to the next, here we have in a very good order. And Cosmic is joining us. While I'm letting Kaz in, I did not see who it was, so I can't refer to it. But whomever asked if these are regular, yeah, we do Bible study every Monday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. Tune in right here. We'll be going again for probably a couple hours. There's my man. What's going on, brother? I won't be able to hear you, I just realized. I won't be able to hear you because I have this fancy headset thing in.
The headset
so
for
I'm going to
what?
be able to hear what Cosmic says. Everyone else can hear what Cosmic says except me. I'm going to see if I can remedy that. I don't know how I'm going to remedy that. Well, here's what I'll do. I'll take off my fancy headset. Can you hear me, Doc?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You know. Okay, so we're good. We're good.
Okay.
Let me turn off my fancy headset. This is fancy, but it's good enough. We're informal. So, now, someone had asked about creating in the two genders, etc. And this is where it happens, in 127. Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam betzelmo, betzelem Elohim bara oto zachar nekeva bara otam. And God created man in his image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. So this is when it comes up. And by the way, now they're plural. Before it was singular. At this verse it splits into plurality. When we talk about evolution, we can even just talk about how a zygote forms. Okay, this follows the pace and the structure of the formation of the human being from the sperm and the egg. God created without the sperm and the egg. God created a singular source, but nonetheless, first it comes into being and then it discerns. So here we have again, and God created man in his image, in the form that was made for him, says Rashi, for everything else was created with a command, whereas man was created with the hands of God. So this is a major point. Everything else God said, let there be this, boom, it popped into being. Let there be that, boom, it popped into being. Let there be fish, boom, they pop into being. Let there be birds, boom, they pop into being. Man he created. Humanity bears the imprint of the touch of God, they say. How do we know this? It's written in Psalms 139:5, and you placed your hand upon me. So man was made with a die, it says, like a coin, which is made by means of a die, which is called coin in Old French. Also, Scripture states in Job 38:14, the die changes like clay. So there's this idea that in heaven, God himself is stamping out the human being, almost like a cookie cutter. That idea of the die that's for a coin, for a human shape, it looks like a little gingerbread man. And it says, in the image of God he created him. It explains to you that the image that was prepared for him was the image of the likeness of the Creator. Now it goes on to say, why does it say male and female he created them? Yet further, Scripture states, and he took one of his ribs. Further on, we know this in Genesis 2:21. It's going to talk about the ribs and all this. The Midrash Agadah in Genesis Rabbah 8:1 and some other chapters explains that God originally created man with two faces, and afterwards he divided him. The simple meaning of the verse here is that Scripture informs you that they were both created on the sixth day, but it does not explain to you how they were created. And it explains that to you elsewhere. So this is saying that there's a midrash, there's an old rabbinic oral legend that in fact man and woman were created as one entity, one being, a two-headed being, a two-faced being that then was split apart. That's what I got for you on 127. What do you got to say about that, Doc? Have you heard that one before?
Yeah, I've even heard that in the alchemical traditions.
So that's why I'm bringing it up, because this is where we start to really brush on and touch on a lot of the alchemical understanding.
You get into alchemy, you get into the joining of Hermes and Aphrodite, giving the hermaphroditus. You go into Greek ideas and Roman ideas that the human was one, and then they were separated and they're supposed to find each other. That's really the idea of the quote-unquote soulmate. or excuse me, twin flame, or whichever they are these days. Yeah, I think that something else you mentioned, or a question came up about creation, the chronology of creation, the timeline of creation. So one of the things that we say in the school of the prophets is that there is a doctrine that God created the world in 6 literal days. There's a doctrine that says that the days were 1,000 years. We see David talk about that, and Peter refers to that also. And then there is what they tell us in the school of the prophets, which was that it could have been an immeasurable amount of time, could have been over millennia, but it was revealed to Moses in 6 days.
So he heard the story over 6 days. I like that.
And so when he would go to the mountain, whatever, he would have this day. At the beginning of that day, he had a vision. This is what happened in this part. He would come again the next day and have a vision. This is what happened at that point. He would write them down. So for him, it was 6 days. He had 6 days of visions of the creation of the universe.
I like that version. I'm wrong with that, Doc. So the next 3 verses we got here, get out your Bibles, get out your highlighters, because you're going to highlight all these for conjure, hands down. Doc, I presume you use these?
Mm-hmm.
128, Genesis 1 and 28, and God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. And rule over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the sky and over all the beasts that tread upon the earth. I realize I neglected the Hebrew. I got to go back and do that. Vayivrech otam Elohim vayomer lahem Elohim pru urvu. That, by the way, is the command, be fruitful and multiply. Pru, from the word... from the same word as fruit. Pru or vu, rabu, is multitudinous. So u is and, so pru, be like fruit, but like fruit and urbu, and multiply greatly. Pru or vu. Umilu et ha'aret. Milu, subdue et ha'aret, and the earth. Chivshua urdu bidgat hayam uv'of hashamayim uv'chol chaya romeset, al haaretz. So a point I want to bring up here, because it's going to become linguistically important as we enter the next chapters here. We have this word, the earth. It comes up multiple times here. We have the word aretz, which means earth. We also have the word Adamah, which means earth. This is really important because this first man who God's creating, we know him as Adam in English, but in Hebrew is Adam. He's of the exact same substance as the earth, but doesn't have the ah at the end, which would make it a female noun. So we're going to look into that a little more, but I want to finish out 1 and 28. What does it mean to subdue? This is interesting. The letter Vav in this, Uchif Shua, is missing. So then you could, because it's not there, you could read it, Vechivosha, which would be the masculine singular imperative. What the fuck does that mean or matter? This is a bullshit. This is why Moses doesn't necessarily love rabbinic interpretation. Because since this is a masculine noun for the word subdue instead of a plural noun, even though we know they're plural, therefore it says the male subdues the female. And that she should not be a gadabut, someone who's rebellious against the male. And also is meant to teach you that the man, whose way it is to subdue, is commanded to propagate, but not the woman. So this is the gender-biased interpretation that the rabbis have put in, okay? But if you look at the first part, it's giving you actually an occult mystery, okay? Both of these are occult mysteries. Don't take them in a literal, cultural, social sense. It says the male subdues the female. This is in terms of energy. The masculine and feminine energies. Looks like we lost Doc with that sneeze. Hopefully we'll get him back. He sneezed out his internet connection. Additionally, it says the man is commanded to propagate, but not the woman. What does that mean? That is saying that the man has to go and work the field, propagate the earth, the woman is not commanded to do that. The verse we're looking at, Genevieve, is Genesis 1:28, and you won't see it in English at all. It's only in the Hebrew. It's in the if you look at the link in my bio, and you scroll down to 1:28, it'll be in the commentary in sort of the grayish, purplish box, analyzing the Hebrew grammar. So, but that is the one that we will use to subdue things. This is, if you have dirt and you're collecting, this is a great one to say when you're collecting dirt, because you have authority to subdue dirt, and over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the sky, and the beasts that tread upon the earth. Okay? This allows you to subdue them, to take them. Next, Genesis 1:29. This one, for any root work you're doing, better be ready to say it. And so you'll see how you'll start highlighting up your Bible. Maybe the root work stuff's going to be green. So when you're doing root work, boom, you pop it open, you read through those green verses, okay? 29, and God said, behold, I have given you every seed-bearing herb, which is upon the surface of the entire earth, and every tree that has seed-bearing fruit, it will be yours for food. In Hebrew, Vayomer Elohim hine, here. Natati, I have given you lachem, natati lachem, I have given to you, et kol esev, zorea zera, every herb that bears forth a seed, that seeds forth a seed, asher, that are al pnei kol haaretz, that are on the face of all the earth. Ve'et kol ha'etz, and all the trees, asher bo, that they have pri ha'etz, that they have the fruit of the tree, zorea zora, that seeds a seed. Bringing cosmic back in here. Lachem yihiyeh le'achla. To you, it will be to achla. Okay? This is here for food. I've seen in the King James maybe, or some other translation that says, will be to you for meat. I'm going to go over to Robert Alter here, which is this translation I really like, who is very big on the literalism.
What'd I miss?
Oh, you know the book already, Doc. You know what you mean.
Well, watch this. Where are we at now?
You hear me jabbering. We're on 1:29.
1:29. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm getting over here. And I'm going to go back a couple verses in a second, but at 1:29, where are you? And God said, look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant on the face of all the earth, and every tree that has the fruit-bearing seed, yours they will be for food. So this one, all right. I personally will use this verse. This actually is not a trick I was going to give out, but we're here. I was going to save this one for our seminar, Doc, because this is my trick. That verse, and then any roots. If you're broke and you need money to buy food, if you need money to support yourself, this verse and any root basically will do it. In my experience, this is like if you can get your hands on a plant and say this verse over it, you can feed yourself.
I was my godmother, Miss Victoria. She would say whenever she would, well, two things. It's interesting from two of the local elders here, right? So Pop off of Rosewood, he would tell you that when you're transacting money, he's old school, he uses cash, that you would make sure that the bill is facing you, right, as you're giving it away. Right?
Of course.
And then Mama Victoria said to me that whenever she sends out money, when she opens up her shop, she's counting, preparing the register, whatever, that's what she would pray over her bills, that you be fruitful and multiply. Go out and bring me more,
Yes.
These verses for herbs, there's also, so there's three of them that I use. This one that you mentioned.
1:29.
The one in Ezekiel about the 12 fruits of the tree, said he saw you guys can, I'll get the reference in a second. And then also in Revelation, all right, the healing, the leaves of the trees for the healing of the nations. And whatever condition they have, break up, let it be healed. If it's, health issue, let it be healed, etc. So those are my kind of three. And actually, the way I do them, so I have my plants laid out. They are in a certain location. I have a chalk line around them with candles. When I go to prepare them, I take them up, present them before God, the powers of the universe, etc. I kiss all the leaves there. Then I read these verses. Now, the latter two references I gave you in the book of Ezekiel and the book of Revelation, there's references to water as well, talking about the river that feeds that tree. So whenever I hear water, all right, depending upon what I'm doing, I'm spraying from my mouth. Normally it's white rum. All right. So those are some. So someone wants me to repeat. Oh, they want you to repeat your verses. Repeat my verses. Rising Phoenix.
I think that was 1 and 29. I don't know if you just want the citation or the read the verse again. And God said, "Behold, I have given you every seed-bearing herb, which is upon the surface of the entire earth, and every tree that has seed-bearing fruit. It will be yours for food." And on to 1 and 30. All of these verses are ones that you can use, that you should be tapping into to command your work. 1 and 30, and you read the whole batch. Ulechol chayot chayat haaretz ulechol of hashamayim ulechol romes al haaretz asher bon nefesh chaya et kol yerek esev leachla. And again, we have this word achla, food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and to all the fowl of the heavens, and to everything that moves upon the earth, in which there is a living spirit. This is asher bon nefesh chaya. That word nefesh we had before, this is different than ruach, which would, and this is again the difference between translation in King James and working in the original. That word spirit, a lot of things are translated into spirit, but what this is talking about, life force. Is not talking about the spiritual breath of God. That would come in as ruach. Nefesh is vitality, chi, life energy. There's a living spirit, every green herb to eat. So again, this is a conquering of the herbs, and it was so. Rashi says, "It will be yours for food." And to all the beasts of the earth, he equated cattle and the beasts to man regarding the food that they were permitted to eat. He didn't permit Adam and his wife to kill a creature and eat its flesh. Only evergreen herbs were all permitted to eat equally. When the sons of Noah came, he permitted them to eat flesh. As it said in Genesis 9 and 3, he says, every creeping thing that is alive. Like the green herbs which I permitted to the first man, I've given you everything. So there's the idea that Adam and Eve were vegans. No doubt that is the diet of the original man. It wasn't until the time of Noah that God gave the dominion and therefore the physical capability to eat and digest animal flesh. 31, the wrap-up. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa v'hineh tov me'od vayhi erev vayhi boker yom hashishi. And God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And it was evening, and it was morning the sixth day. Couple notes here. Previously, God said it was good. This time, God says it was very good. There's going to be commentary on this for certain. A note on the Hebrew from the Rashi. Scripture added the letter Hey on the sixth day at the completion of the creation to tell us that God stipulated with them, you were created on the condition that Israel accepted the 5 books of the Torah. Doc, this is that clever Jewish logic. So there's an additional letter A in this word that doesn't belong there. Naturally, the scribes copy it book to book to book to make sure it's right. So it's always copied in. You don't pronounce it. Why is it there? It's there because the letter Hey is equal to the number 5. And this is to remind you that all of this is contingent on keeping the 5 books. Another explanation for why it's spelled like that is that the works of creation were all suspended until what they called the 6th day, which is the 6th day of the month of Sivan, which was prepared for the giving of the Torah, according to other scriptures. The Hey then is the definite article alluding to the well-known 6th day, the 6th day of Sivan, when the Torah was given. So this is the rabbi saying that there's this holiday where we celebrate the giving of the Torah, and all of creation was put on hold. It was actually done.
God finished it and said, "You guys hang until I'm ready to give the law." And when we think of what the law is that which gives order, right? So what gives order in the universe to us is this pattern of energy that we're all going through, that the planets above and the stars and the heavenly bodies is going on in us, that's going on in the smallest atoms and quarks, this ongoing pattern that's happened, whether we're talking from since the Big Bang or we take the biblical, since God set things into motion by his word. But that is the law that was given. These are the books of the law. See, you have to pay close attention. They'll talk about the books of the law. That's the Torah. But the word Torah means law. So when we're talking about God giving the law, that's setting things into ordered motion.
Today, what we call physics.
There is no, as I like to say all the time, in these days there was just the science. There's just science. That was it. Knowledge. Mm-hmm. It was physics. It was math. It was religion. It was everything. If you knew shit, it was that category of stuff. If you're just feeling stuff, it's maybe something different. So now we made it to chapter 2, guys. Thank God. After 3 hours, we made it through a chapter of the book. We're plugging along here. Done in no time. 2 and 1. Vaychulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzva'am. Now the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their host. Tzva'am. This is interesting. It doesn't say all their creations, all their inhabitants. It says tzva'am. The word is host. We know that word. Doc, you know that word in the holy name. Adonai tzva'ot.
The armies.
Yes. Tzva is the army. So this word, interestingly, is describing the hierarchical nature of an army at minimum onto the creation. But again, they don't say all the living beings. They say all the tzvaot, all the hosts. I want to go back to Robert Alter and see how he does this one. All their array, he says. I'll take that.
In the Strong's Sabah, from the Hebrew key 6633, a mass of persons or figurative things, especially regularly organized for war, as in an army, by implication a campaign, literally or figuratively, specifically a hardship in worship, and appoint a time to army, plus battle, company, host, service, soldiers, waiting upon war or warfare. This is interesting because years and years and years and years and years ago, I was contending, we were in discourse, as I began to make some of my thoughts more public. And there was a young man he was also a young minister at the time. He took it upon himself to contend with me publicly and refute my every turn. And I'd give it to him. He had me bested for, I think I had pretty much put the white towel in for like 5 months. He thought it was done. And for me, it was done too. I said, wow. Then I came across something else. The matter at hand we're talking about was astrology. And then I came across Judges chapter 5. And in Judges chapter 5, Deborah, how do y'all pronounce it? Y'all probably pronounce it Deborah or Deborah? Deborah, okay. I keep asking people that. In the book of Judges, chapter 5, she talks about how they conquered with Sisera. What she said was that the stars fought against him. In their courses, they fought against him. And when you look at it, it's not just stars in the sense of the angels per se, though there is a deep correlation between the two. But then, in fact, it was the heavenly bodies. He got up. It must have been Mercury retrograde, I guess, for him. He got up on a bad day, and it didn't go well for him. So I bring that point up to say here that these astrological configuration, these celestial powers, are arrayed in all their glory according to Genesis.
I want to go, before we get any further into the creation story, I do want to, Robert Alter has a good note on this idea of Adam, meaning a human, and Adamah, meaning ground, earth. The term Adam, afterward consistently with a definite article, which is used both here and in the second account of the origins of humankind, is a generic term for human beings, not the name Adam. It also does not automatically suggest maleness, especially not without the prefix ben, son of. And so the traditional rendering man is misleading. And an exclusively male Adam would make nonsense of the last clause of verse 27. So the idea here is that the very fact that the King James translation translates Adam as man instead of human is fundamentally biased.
Mm-hmm.
But because the connection is just that we are, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, that we're clay. That's what it is implying. All right. I think IG is going to probably shut me down soon, right, bud? They let me go for an hour, and I've been going for, I think, 55.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to end this. We're going to come back live in about 90 seconds. I'll see you guys back here in about 90 seconds. I'm just going to get a charger. We'll be right back. Save this one and do my damnedest to publish it. Catch you guys in a few.